don't get enough thank yous. And it's not time yet for Mr. Strauss to come. So he always comes in June.
All right, welcome to our April 5th board meeting. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Has the meeting been properly noticed, Carolyn?
It has.
Thank you very much. And before we move to public comments, I'm just going to briefly go over the ground rules for individuals who are attending this meeting in person. Those who are attending this meeting in person, we ask that you adhere to the following, that masks be worn at all times, that social distancing of at least 6 feet be strictly maintained unless next to members of your immediate household. To ensure 6 feet distancing, capacity is limited. And once we meet capacity in accordance with Public Health, Madison, and Dane County requirements, we will restrict entry. Eating is not permitted. Please sit only in areas permitted and as directed by the ushers. And unfortunately, failure to abide by these requirements will result in removal from the venue. So we appreciate your adherence to those ground rules. And with that, I will invite anyone who wishes to speak during the public comment portion in person to make their way up to either microphones here at the front of the stage. Please state your name and your address, and you'll have about 3 minutes to provide public comment. So anyone who wishes to address the board, please feel free to make your way down. And as you stand in line, please ensure you are maintaining social distancing. Thank you and welcome. And if you could approach the microphone and make sure you speak clearly and slowly as I've been instructed. Sometimes it is difficult for us to hear on the live feed. So thank you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. My name is Anna Liska. My address is 403 Lucille Street here in Verona. All right. So while I support the idea of allowing all high school students who are virtual the chance to return in person for fourth quarter, I want to emphasize the importance of high school seniors being able to attend in person as a priority. For years, students like my son have been so excited about being the first senior class to attend and graduate from the new high school. Senior year is such a special and final time in a student's life. It is the culmination of their K-12 experience, which shapes who they are and who they will become. Everyone remembers their senior year for the rest of their lives. I can't help thinking how it would feel to be a senior this year, sitting at their graduation ceremony, having never been able to attend this beautiful new high school in person. It is a painful reminder that will stay with them forever. It will also be sad and disheartening for them to attend future VAHS events that their younger siblings or friends will participate in. Virtual learning has been a struggle for many students, including my son. Zoom is no substitute for real-life personal connections. When we had to choose between the two options over winter break, things were so different with the pandemic. So much has changed now that we are in April, and the administration needs to update the reopening plan to allow more students to attend in person. Every parent I have spoken to, even those with younger students who are unable to go back in person, has fully supported the idea that seniors be given the opportunity to return in person. So I strongly urge you to survey families with seniors and make an evidence-based reopening plan that would welcome virtual seniors back in person for the remainder of the year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to address the board during public comment, feel free to approach the microphone.
Good evening. I'm Sheila Zink, 313 Thompson Street here in Verona. And I'm going to piggyback on what Anna said. We, the Zink family, would love Erin, our daughter, who is a senior, to be able to have the chance to experience the new school and complete her final year at Verona Area High in person. She will be fully vaccinated in a few weeks and will then feel safe and comfortable to return. She is excited and has anticipated returning like so many other high school students around our entire state, although she has not been given this chance. And for this, we are very saddened. In January, when things were clearly different and more unknown, we, as well as 1/3 of the entire high school families, did not want to take the risk of sending our children at that time and chose to do virtual learning. We are definitely not alone. We hopefully anticipated that you would reflect the CDC recommendations and honor and update their considerations so that all students would be shown care and be treated equitably by being offered a chance to go in person. When data reflected all person, excuse me, sorry, I skipped a line. We were definitely not alone. We hopefully anticipated that you would reflect the CDC recommendations and honor and update their considerations so that all students would be shown care and be treated equitably by being offered a chance to go in person when data reflected a safer world. Now we know it is a safer world. Won't you please give Aaron and the other 500+ students this chance? To ignore 1/3 of your students and their families is not acceptable for any reason. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Anyone else who is attending in person and would like to provide comment to the board, please feel free to approach the microphone. Last call for any public comment for in-person attendance. Okay, seeing none. Oh, welcome.
Thanks. I thought as long as I made it here, I might as well comment. I've sent numerous emails to most of you.
Could you approach a little bit closer to the microphone? Thank you.
Heather Reiki, 742 Schubert Street, Verona. I've sent lots of emails regarding this issue. I'm just hoping that you will take into account the changed CDC recommendations, also recognizing that the school district can make different choices based on the data that we've acquired. And I guess I'm just hopeful that you'll take all the information provided in the emails and different things you've heard from other residents of the district into account when deciding whether or not seniors and other students throughout the district, especially those with IEPs and 504 plans, could potentially return to school at some point at the beginning of the fourth quarter or during the fourth quarter. So just putting my plug in for that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to address the board during public comment, feel free to approach the microphone. Seeing none, we do have a few comments that have been submitted via email about, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I think that they all have the same language. So we have an email from Linnea Matalat, Rachel Drum, Rachel Kleber, and Sarah Milhans. And the body of their comments reads, when CDC revised physical distancing recommendations to reflect at least 3 feet between students in classrooms, the recommendations also provided clearer guidance when a greater distance, such as 6 feet, is recommended. This part of that clearer guidance maintains 6 feet of distance in the following settings when masks cannot be worn, such as when eating. The American Academy of Pediatrics also recommends that 6 feet is maintained during lunch because of the need to remove face masks during eating. It has come to my attention that VASD is not planning to have students maintain 6 feet of distance when masks cannot be worn, namely at lunch and breakfast. This is irresponsible and ignores science-based recommendations and safety measures. Please reconsider this and follow the CDC guidelines when students are unmasked. Before we move on, I want to check to make sure that that's all the comments that we've received.
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we don't have any additional in-person public comment. I do want to say we appreciate everybody attending and submitting their comments. And hopefully during our fourth quarter reopening agenda item, we'll be able to address the questions and comments that have been submitted. So thank you all very much. With that, we can move on to announcements. Are there any announcements from the board?
You know, I just want to wish a good luck to our swimmers who are going to state tomorrow. Just good luck to the VAMH girls, and thank you so much to the coaches for all of their work to make this season possible. So they'll be doing an alternative state, and I just wish them the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
As deputy clerk, I would just like to remind everybody, you got a rare opportunity tomorrow, if you haven't voted already, that there are 4 seats open for election tomorrow. And I like seeing big numbers at elections like this because they represent the people. This is so local. It's so important to me that people vote tomorrow on these local races. So I'm just a reminder to vote if you haven't already.
Thank you very much, Tom. Other announcements from the board? Dean, any from you?
Just one announcement tonight, Noah. So last week, we were made aware that Findorf, the construction manager for our new high school, was given a very prestigious award from the, I'm going to get this wrong, but it's a national award. It's from other construction manufacturers. Rachel, what was the title of it exactly?
Building Merit Award from the Associated General Contractors of America.
Thank you. I would have never gotten that one right. What she said, anyway, it's the equivalent of an Oscar for a construction management firm. So Findorf and Sons, which has been around for over 100 years, has never received this award before. There's different categories based on price of projects. So this one happens to be for those projects that are $126 million or more. So this is in rarefied company air. So like the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta and the Daytona 500, if I got that right. So those are some other examples of projects that have received this award. And one of the items that was noted in the application and noted in the award was the use of materials harvested from the site. So we're very happy for Findorf as this is a coveted award for any construction management firm. And we're just really thrilled that it was for our new high school.
Thank you very much. Last call for any announcements from the board. All right, hearing none, we can move on to board business. We'll start with the public hearing to consider the resolution to request a waiver from DPI regarding statutory requirements of hours of instruction. Dean, you want to talk about the process here?
Sure, I'll hand this over to Emmett as he led this process.
Thank you. So as a reminder, last year we went through the same sort of process, which was what's required by state law. If we look for a waiver, is the board must have a public hearing and then a resolution that they vote on to ask or direct the administrators of the district to apply for a waiver. And there's a whole list of different waivers during this pandemic time that DPI has allowed districts to consider. Although when looking at it, because they already had plans to have a lot of flexibility built into the way we do work this year, the primary one that they encouraged, gently encouraged districts to look at was hours of instruction, which would mean that there, by state law, there's a certain number of hours of instruction that are required due to all the emergency orders from the state as well as the county, particularly as we've discussed at many meetings. It was necessary to adjust the way that we were doing school this year which led to fewer instructional hours of students in seat or even direct virtual instruction, some of it being asynchronous, which under state law isn't the same thing. So what we're asking is to consider the resolution that's in the board packet that was written out, which asks you to consider that resolution. And then also if you go to a vote on that, then that would direct us to apply for that waiver. So that's in a nutshell what questions you have about that process or what's in the resolution.
Could somebody explain to me the public hearing side of this? I'm not sure how that works. Does that mean the public votes, or I just want that explained, please?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And so I ran that by Lori Lubinsky, so our attorney. State law requires a public hearing for any sort of waiver action from the board. My understanding in talking to Lori Lubinsky is that it just needs to be stated as such and it has to be in an open meeting. So on the agenda, it says public hearing, it's an open meeting, and that allows the public to participate or to hear directly what's being discussed about that resolution. That's my understanding.
And in the past, we've utilized public comment. If there were any comments related to the hearing notice, that during the public comment period, that's when you would participate. So
Sounds good. Any questions?
I have a question about the waiver, not about the process.
Sure.
How many hours of instruction are we going to have, and how, like, compared to what's typically required?
That is a good question. I don't have that in front of me as to what would count as an hour of instruction, although we can definitely add those up to get an approximation. It'd be different for different students too. Those that had more hours of instruction in person or direct virtual versus asynchronous versus synchronous. So it might be a little difficult to come up with an exact number, but we could give you a range if you'd like.
My main issue with this is, I've always wanted the kids in school, and I don't understand how we can ask for a waiver for hours, but we don't got our kids in school 5 days a week. We've got oodles of emails for kids in school 5 days a week. So can you explain to me that? Because to me, it just doesn't make any sense. It feels like we're not trying to get the hours to have the, instruction time.
That's a good question. I don't know if Dean, you want to comment on that too. What I would say though is that by state law, there's a number of instructional hours, and anytime you're below that for a reason that would seem like a reasonable reason, essentially that's what's in the law, a reasonable reason where you would not be able to give them all in. A couple of cases came up. So in the resolution, a couple of the things that came from the county, for example, when they required that 3 through 12th grade students could not be in person for a period of time, that was out of our control at that point, right? So that was different than a lot of counties that didn't have that order in place. So I agree that it seems a little odd, right, for the reasons you gave, but also because there's a whole bunch of counties in the state who had different rules and orders. We were one of the only that had an order from the county that essentially reduced the hours of instruction available to us.
I would have no problem with this. I'm just talking the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
I'm only talking the fourth quarter. I have no problem if we had 5 day a week school in the fourth quarter. I mean, I know all the other garbage that went on, and but that's where my problem lies. Just the fourth quarter.
I hear you.
Other questions or comments? Okay. With that, we can move to item B and consider action on the resolution. Each board member should have that in your packet. Would anybody like to make a motion? We do need a motion if we'd like to approve the resolution.
I'll move to approve as listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and there's a second to approve the resolution as listed on the agenda. Any last questions or comments before we vote? Yep, yeah, thank you. Yep, the motion was from Meredith and the second was from Yana. Any last questions or comments before we vote? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
By a vote of 6-1, this resolution is approved. And we can move to item C, and we'll consider approval of the consent agenda items. We have our regular meeting minutes, personnel items, payment of the bills, and an agreement, which I might let you, Dean, provide a little comments on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Noah. So the 6603 agreement with the Wanakee School District is for our continued participation in the Dane County New Teacher Project. So we have been a participant in this project for the entire time I've been here, in at least a couple, 3 years prior to my arrival here. So going on close to 20 years. Wanakee is the fiscal agent for that. So that's why the agreement would be with Wanakee, because we actually pay them. We're one of several school districts in Dane County, and we've also added schools outside of Dane County. And this has been an invaluable tool for our teacher mentors. Those are our veteran staff who help mentor our brand new teachers to the school district. So we've had great success with this. The feedback that we continually get from this from, year after year is that it's well worth the price we pay. And it's a little under $11,000 for our participation in this annually. So I would heartily recommend the board approve this.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And any discussion on other items in the consent agenda?
I just wanted to add that the New Teacher Project is one of my favorite programs. I've been on the board for quite a while, and I have to say there isn't anything I think that gives us as big a bang for our buck as nurturing our new teachers. And especially considering the last year that we've had, there's no better time to invest in our newer teachers and supporting them. It's been very difficult. So, and I would like to add the dollar amount for the bills that we're paying tonight, just for your reference. $7,630,553.79. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? Last call. Hearing none, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda. If there aren't any objections, this motion will be adopted. Are there any objections? Last call for any objections. Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved, and we can move to item D, review school phased opening plans for fourth quarter.
All right, thank you, Noah. And again, I'm going to share the podium with several of my colleagues this evening who will step up to the mic to take various portions of this. Board members, you should have received this from me just prior to the board meeting. So if you want to toggle through on the slides that you have, and I'll toggle through up here also. So if I can get this correct. So we start off with just some pictures from around the school district. So we're surely glad to see spring arrival and all the renewal that brings, not just from things coming up from the ground, but just attitudes getting us through March. And look at that, we have one picture of Rita on here, and Rita is in the audience tonight. So Rita, thanks for all the work that you've done for us throughout this year on all things tech related. A little picture from our senior class fundraiser, and I think we'll hear more about senior class items coming up tonight. I'm looking for Pam. I thought she was there. She is right there in a little bit here. All right, so this structure of this presentation is similar to what we've done in the past. So we'll give a little bit of update on attendance and public health and planning for fourth quarter, summer school, and forecasting for next year. So as we have done in the past, we have provided the board with attendance from across the different school sites. In this particular update, we haven't broken it down like we did a couple of meetings ago. But again, the attendance rate continues to be hold fairly steady across all the sites. And so as we have been, we will keep an eye on this throughout the end of the school year as well. So last Friday, Public Health Madison-Dane County issued order number 15, which goes into effect at 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday, April 7th. And this new order 15 will expire on May 5th. So there will be an order 16. And before the end of the school year, there will be an Order 17. Some of the, and we'll go through some of the revisions in Order number 15. So it does change mass gatherings outside. Face coverings are required indoors and on transportation, not required outdoors, but strongly recommended when 6 feet is not, cannot be maintained. We'll talk more about that in terms of what that means for our outdoor athletic events. Schools and childcare were combined. Previous to this, they were separated. And then there's changes to protective measures language. And again, we'll go through all of this in more detail here in just a bit. Starting with the changes to the gathering limits. So what I have here for you on, and board members, we are on slide number 9 now in your presentation. So the Order number 14, you can see what the indoor gathering and outdoor gathering limits were under Order 14. Under Order 15, the indoor limits did not change at all, as we had anticipated that they might. The outdoor did change, and it's limited essentially to the capacity of your facility so that you can maintain 6 feet of distancing at all times. So again, that's going to vary from site to site depending on what the capacity is. And Joel Zimba is here this evening. Also, we'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of what that means for us in outdoor athletic venues. Then slide number 10, board members, the face coverings are required, even though the Wisconsin Supreme Court in a 4-3 decision struck down the legality of the governor's order for face coverings. That does not impact the county's order, or for that matter, an individual school district's requirement for face masks. So, and this is a language taken directly from the order. So in any enclosed building, in line to enter any enclosed building, driving or riding in any vehicle when you're with people that are not of your same household. So that would include buses for us, for example. And again, they're not required outdoors, strongly recommended when it's not possible to maintain 6 feet of distancing. And again, that's language taken directly from Order number 15. Slide number 11 is busy. This is a very busy slide. So the left-hand side of this is kind of a comparison between Order number 14 and Order number 15. So the left-hand side of this is language from Order number 14. And it gets very convoluted in item number 3 in terms of when it's not possible, they should be cohorted to the, or as static as possible, blah, blah, blah. So that was very difficult to follow and to interpret. And Lori Levinsky, who is here this evening, has been of great assistance in all 14, now 15 of these orders. And so the top part of the right-hand side was just an attempt at the last board meeting to summarize what that was trying to say. And that was under the protective measures portion of Order number 14. So now Order number 15 gets rid of that clunky language altogether. And so Order number 15 just says this: ensuring procedures for distancing for students, children, and employees. So clarity has not been a forte of public health orders. And so I called our liaison to get an interpretation of what exactly that means. And so the second bullet under Order number 15 is, I should have put quotes around that because that's directly from Rachel Goldberg at Public Health. It means have a procedure or process for distancing staff, students as much as possible. So it doesn't make reference to a distance, just as much as possible. So that's what that means. So all that convoluted language in Order number 14 went away to what I guess might be a little more clear language, but still unclear. But that's the interpretation of that. And we'll hear a little bit more about this in terms of what that means with regard to distancing at lunch and breakfast when Angie and Lori come up to present. So board members, we're on to slide number 12 now, and I think this would be the good time for Angie and Lori to come on down.
Good evening. So as we move into Q4, elementary and secondary, we will continue with our safety measures and the protocols and the recommendations from PHMDC. So we'll continue with cohorting, social distancing. Students will be expected to wear masks along with adults and other mitigation measures. And then this week, we're going to share school-specific plans with families. They should receive something via email and school messenger. And that will include the principal sharing how spaces will be utilized to support students. And so each building, because of its configuration, will have a school-specific plan. But what I can tell you is, for example, in our classrooms for breakfast, students will be seated, as they're seated in rows, you might have every other student that is eating. So that means those students that are seated every other, they're 6 feet. So that group would eat first for 15 minutes, and then the alternate students would eat. So principals and school leaders have worked really hard to creatively think of ways and develop plans to allow for the greatest extent possible of distance between students. So that being said, we'll turn it over. Lori's going to talk about additional things that are happening in secondary.
Good evening, everyone. So I just echo what Angie said in terms of the degree of planning that has gone into this next phase of reopening. Our school nurses have worked diligently alongside our principals, and we are looking at maximizing all of our spaces. So there are creative solutions happening within classrooms when kids are eating in classrooms, and then we have maximized spaces. As a parent, I can tell you I received some information from Sugar Creek today, which a very comprehensive list of all of the mitigation strategies that are taking place in all the different locations in the building where kids will be eating lunch where they hadn't been eating up until now, so that we're using additional spaces. The same is true at the middle school level. So in this building, between Core and Badger Ridge, if you take a walk down to the commons area, you'll see that desks are spaced 6 feet apart, will remain 6 feet apart, and we have a lot of different shifts that are happening. In some cases, schools have added lunch shifts. In others, we've tried not to, because we also don't want children eating lunch at 9:30 in the morning or at 1:30 in the afternoon. But in some cases, we have kids eating earlier than maybe we would normally have them eating, and a little bit later. But again, it's to maximize that distancing and ensure we're in compliance with any public health orders and recommendations. And in terms of instruction, as you know, our option 1 students will be coming 4 days per week, Tuesday through Friday. We're really excited about that. Desks are spaced within classrooms. So again, we're not going back to what the classrooms looked like pre-COVID. In pre-COVID, we had groups of desks, children working together in small groups. We're still seating children with space in between them. Option 2 students will remain with concurrent instruction, and our elementary standalone virtuals will remain in that same mode. Mondays will be non-instructional days. And in the case of students with IEPs, if they haven't already been talking to their case manager, I know those conversations have been happening. And I just want to double check with Emmett that that's the case. And then in terms of targeted outreach, similar to what we did when we were inviting students in for Plus, our principals have been reaching out to students who may be credit deficient, who may have low attendance rates or other concerns about engagement and performance. And we have been inviting students to come into school. Some families have accepted that offer, others have not, and we will provide supports as we can. And then you can see state assessments continue. They are continuing in person. There is not a remote option for the forward exam or for Aspire testing, which is also a part of our state assessment system. And our 9th and 10th graders will be coming into the high school on Monday, April 26th to take that exam.
Hey, Lori and Angie. I know a lot of planning has gone into the different buildings, and I'm just wondering if the documents that are sent to parents, just kind of outlining all the mitigation and and intentional planning, if you could share those with the board, just so that we have some of that too for like the different elementary plans. And I know they vary from building to building, but if you could share that, that would be great.
Absolutely. That's great feedback. And our middle schools, and I want to take a look at Jamie Thomas, who I know was on the consent agenda tonight. So I'm excited to announce Jamie as our new Badger Ridge Middle School directing principal, who has done a tremendous job, as you know, in leading the way in getting kids back in school, starting back in summer school. She has done a tremendous amount of work and leadership within the building that has not only made a difference in the building, but also has impacted every child who's been coming to school in person this whole school year. So I'm super excited for that. And I just wanted to make sure that I took the time at the mic to give a shout out to Jamie. So anyhow, our middle school principals will be sending out information this Wednesday to families. And Pam always does video messages for her families, and that information will also be getting out. But I'll make sure the principals also forward that on to you as board members so you can see. In terms of the last slide, when Dean was talking about the protective measures, I think what I saw as a parent and the message I received today from Sugar Creek outlines exactly that. There's a really comprehensive list, not only of the distancing, but also things like kids coming in the same entrance and exiting a different entrance. These are protective measures to make sure that we're always distancing. And that's just one example. Todd Bruner had about 15.
Yes, thank you for sharing it with us, because I know it's reassuring, and I obviously get the ones pertaining to my own children, but it's nice to kind of see the overview, and I know they've had to be creative given the spaces they have in different buildings and that kind of thing. So it's
absolutely.
Nice to have that.
And we talked a lot about furniture at the past few meetings. So again, just a huge shout out, because it really does take a village, and it takes all of our staff to make sure that we can open safely. So a huge thank to Mark Clark and his team of our custodians, because we've needed every single person to make every part of our phased reopening successful.
Lori, I have a question for you. I've been getting quite a few emails regarding TWE and some changes there and phone calls that I have no idea what to say. So can you just give us an idea of what's happening there?
Sure. So in our choice programs at the elementary level for TWE and our charters, because those teachers had concurrent instruction happening. They had both option 1 and option 2 students combined. Our TWE principals and our charter directors extended an invitation to option 2 families within those programs to see if they would be interested in having their children return to in-person school. In some cases, we have grade levels where all of the parents have accepted the invitation. So we have certain grade levels in classrooms, both in TWE and I know for sure at CORE, where there will not have to be any more concurrent instruction happening. In the cases where we do have still option 1 and option 2 students, for the most part, the instructional day won't change for students. What might change is the homeroom that the option 2 students are in. So what we are trying to do is to take a look at which students will continue learning virtually, and can we put them together so that even though their day won't look different, for the teachers, it will look different. So if you and I were the TWE teachers, you would only have to teach concurrently in the morning, because we switch groups halfway through the day, and I would do the concurrent teaching in the afternoon, but you wouldn't need to. But in terms of continuity for the children, there really isn't a change. So if parents have questions, I think the best thing to do would be to ask them to reach out to the principal. Teachers will also be sending out schedules this week with more detailed information. Families can also reach out to me.
So the students would essentially still have their same teachers?
Correct. What could possibly change is who they're working with during small group or independent work time. It could be a bilingual resource teacher or the classroom teacher, because again, what we're trying to do is match our supports where we are able to provide students with continuity of instruction. Once the classroom teachers have 18 children in the classroom, it's going to take more time and energy to focus on the kids who are learning in person, because again, we're still following distancing rules. But if I still have children who are virtual, they deserve the same type of instruction and support. So that's where we're taking a look at how to use our bilingual resource teachers to see if they can be the ones leading that small group virtual instruction with both the option 2 children and some of the option 1 kids who are joining that small group via Zoom. So there really is there could be a possible change in homeroom, but it's the same teachers. And the rationale for that is to just reduce the amount of concurrent instruction time for each teacher.
Thank you.
And Lori, just to confirm, the only other instances of concurrent learning might be if a student would need to quarantine. So in other words, if they were normally going to be an in-person learner, but something, prompted them to go virtual, whether that's choice, charter, or our regular programming, that would be the one instance where there might still be a level of concurrent instruction going on, correct?
Correct. And that would be true K-12. What we're trying to do, though, and what we want to make sure that we're clear on, now that option 1 is coming to school Tuesday through Friday, we want children in person Tuesday through Friday. I know I had some families reach out and say, well, I'd really like my child to just attend Tuesday and Wednesday because Thursday and Friday really works for us. We would like option 1 to be 4 days of in-person instruction for all children. If we need to quarantine, that's a different case. Then of course we would continue with that, but it gets really hard to keep track of students if we're kind of flowing in and out. The flexibility is nice, but we're now back in school as of next Tuesday, 4 days per week.
I don't know who to ask this question, whether it's Dean or you, Lori, but we've had parents asking about being virtual, but not being given the option to come back in person now, and I don't really understand why that isn't the case.
Well,
I'm talking in January. They picked in January or whatever now. Why weren't they given the option to come back now?
So we asked families to make a choice for a semester, and part of that rationale was we didn't know how things would play out throughout the course of the semester. We are in a different place now where many of us have been vaccinated, but distancing rules have not completely gone away. The recommendations are still there. And if we were to broadly open things up, we could get to a place in some classrooms where we're not able to physically distance or guarantee even 3 feet of social distancing. So while I know that the new public health order doesn't mention a number, it's also not advisable to be having class sizes of 30 at this time.
And Tom, I'll just emphasize that too. So in the conversation that I had with Rachel last Friday, shortly after the order number 15 was posted, in addition to the quote that I put on there, she said, what we're really trying to avoid schools doing is just jamming kids into classrooms like it's no COVID at all. And so, for sure, things have changed since January when we asked parents to make a commitment for a semester. But we're also at a point too where we're keeping an eye on these variants that are going around. We're not COVID free. For every additional student we add in person, there's additional chances of contact tracing and quarantining, because within the 6 feet for 15 minutes or more in a 24-hour period, nothing about that has changed in terms of the definition of a close contact. So that's where we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve bringing in as many kids as we can, still distancing to the maximum extent possible, and trying to limit the number of kids that will be out on quarantine, not because they necessarily have COVID, but they're considered a close contact with somebody who is positive.
Hey, Dean, can I just ask, how does the vaccination status of the student, so someone who's older than 16 or 16 could have received Pfizer, does that change their close contact of the requirement?
I can't speak to that. I don't know if Lori Lubinsky is up to that, being able to speak to that. I don't know. And I don't know how many of our kids will be vaccinated, and I'm not sure that we can even ask that question.
So I can briefly address that by just basically...
Lori, come on down. You're not going to escape the microphone.
Sorry for the jeans tonight, Board. I can briefly address that by saying that number one, the CDC recommendations on close contact seem to be suggesting that a person who is vaccinated and has that 2-week window may not need to be deemed a close contact. We're waiting on confirmation of that. That may in fact play in toward the latter part of May. Obviously, individuals who are now eligible as of now may be getting vaccinated, and they may be students age 16, 17, and 18. So my prediction, and it is a bit of a crystal ball, is that it will impact whether somebody is a close contact and thus needs to be quarantined. We do need to get confirmation from public health, from Dane County Public Health, because they're the ones that have the quarantine order in place. Given what we've heard at the Medical Advisory Committee meetings, it is my impression that that will indeed be codified or at least embraced by Dane County Public Health. Did I answer that question?
Yes, that helps just clarify that, because I happen to have a student who's a lifeguard, and there are other high school students I'm aware of who have jobs, for example, that qualified them for vaccination earlier.
Yeah.
So things like restaurant workers, grocery store workers, lifeguards, a number of our teenagers work those jobs and have been vaccinated or are due for, a second shot like now or have been. So that was one thing I wondered, just, knowing that information, whether that helped alleviate some of that close contact, requirement.
So it will certainly not alleviate the contact tracer's job to determine who the close contacts are. And as Dean well points out, we as a school can't mandate our students get vaccinated, nor can we certainly, well, I suppose we could ask them, but at a certain point, let's say a student is identified as a close contact of a COVID positive person. Then we would be communicating with them, that student saying, you've been determined to be a close contact and therefore need to go through quarantine. And in theory, again, once we confirm with Dane County Public Health, that student might be able to produce his or her vaccination record to say, hey, I've been vaccinated. I no longer need to be determined to be a close contact. And again, my crystal ball prediction is, I believe Dane County Public Health will agree in that scenario that that person need not be subject to a quarantine. But as Dean points out, it's not something we're going to demand our students have, but certainly maybe a defense that they would have that they could raise if they're found to be a close contact.
Yes, Lori, I would see it as more of like them wanting to self-disclose that to avoid the quarantine situation.
Exactly.
I'm particularly thinking of seniors. I know we're going to go over in this presentation some of the events coming up.
Yeah.
And I think for the seniors I know of who have been, that is a reassurance to them that they can then produce, their vaccination card and not miss out on some senior activities because they are exempted, hopefully, by public health from having to do the quarantining that they would have had to do otherwise.
And we know that that's the case for adults. We just don't know that that's the case right now because as of, I think today, unless they had serious health conditions, students ages 16, 17, and 18 have not been allowed to be vaccinated, again, unless they have those service jobs or are in certain industries. Mm-hmm. So we will seek clarification from Dane County Public Health and get the answer to that, and that might help in the activities that we're going to talk about later tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
And this wasn't on any slide, but I'll speak to it just briefly here. So with regard to vaccination of students 16 and older, currently the only vaccine that is authorized for that age group is Pfizer. And so I have reached out to GHC about setting up a vaccination clinic for students. The only vaccine that they have been able to get is Moderna, which is not authorized for 16 and up, well, ages 16 and 17, nor is Johnson & Johnson. And we did push out, Rachel pushed out a note last week to parents of students who are 16, 17, about the opportunities to sign up for vaccination, and there's various places throughout the state, including at some point Dane County, for students to get a vaccination with that. And then I've also been in contact with Thad Shoemaker. He's the owner operator of Fitchburg Family Pharmacy, about the possibility of doing a vaccination clinic for students here. So that is still in the works, if we can make that work. So just a little bit on that.
I have a question. I know that in our last meeting, Christina mentioned if we at all have any openings available for seniors or could do some surveying of seniors to see if there are any who want to come back in person. Is that something that we could consider? I don't know how many seniors that would be, but I know that this is a big year for our seniors and they've gone through a lot. And Christina mentioned, offering some grace for them to come back in person, even though they did choose virtual in January. So just curious about what kind of wiggle room we have, at least for our seniors.
I think that's great feedback, and we can certainly take a look at numbers. Pam is here tonight. I know she'll be talking about some of those end of year activities. And I know I probably shouldn't get personal, but I feel you parents. I'm the parent of a graduate of the class of 2020. So I know the loss that kids are feeling is very real. So we hear that feedback and we can take a look at numbers, come back and report back at a future meeting.
I just want to add to that, Yana, I'm still, as you mentioned, interested in that. And even, I guess my feeling is, in echoing what our community members who came forward today with their public comments and other emails that we've received, for seniors, even if it's something, a partial schedule allowance, like if we realize they can only come for the morning, or I know some seniors have limited schedules, right, with RPs and only needing certain credits. Even if it's only 1 or 2 classes that they're allowed to come in for. I think giving grace to seniors makes a lot of sense. And if there's a way the guidance counselors maybe could reach out to those seniors who've picked virtual but really would like to be able to step foot in the building before they graduate and figure out if there's a portion of their schedule that they could attend, I, as a board member, would be very, very much in favor of that.
I think this year has been full. I want to just a shout out to our staff. I know you're making impossible choices, right? We have had impossible choice after impossible choice. There's been a series of them. It's so hard as from people who care about students, who care about every senior, who care about every student that comes through the doors, to have to make these kind of choices because of logistics and number of kids that you can get in the room and planning and trying to keep everybody safe. And, even the parents that were concerned about eating in class and not being 6 feet apart, that was a big worry. Mm-hmm. And, we're trying to meet so many different opposing metrics. So thank you for your hard work. Thank you for anything you can do for the seniors to get them through. And I know we're going to be talking about seniors in a few minutes, but there's also another big concern on my mind, and that is our juniors. I don't want to wait until fall to figure out that they're struggling. I'd like to think about them by summer or sooner if we can, because they're next. They're next out into the world, right? And then we don't have any more time with them. So time's running out. I know everybody's tired. I know everybody's given 150%, 200% more than anybody ever had. So thank you for keeping to working on things that make it human, even though we've made a policy. I'm a little concerned about our minority students because more of them chose virtual than in person. And I think proportionately that puts them at a disadvantage of getting any in-person time. So I don't want to have a policy that makes things inequitable on top of everything else. So I'll leave it up to you all to do the right thing. I know you will, but just keep that in mind as you go forward.
Thanks for that. Feedback, all feedback helps us do better thinking. So I just appreciate you giving us that feedback, and we'll do more thinking and come back to you at another meeting with more information.
And with that, that'd probably be a good segue into talking about end of year high school stuff. So with that, Pam, it looks like Rita is coming also.
I feel like we're the star performers tonight with our good news, and we need a drum roll.
There you go. Okay.
So everybody knows who I am, Pam Hammond, the high school principal.
Pam, if you could step up a little closer though.
But for those of you who are newer to the board, this is Rita Mortensen. Hi, everybody. She's our tech coordinator, but she's here tonight because she's one of our senior class advisors. And what we're here to talk about tonight is that we have some new news from Dane County Public Health, And we've been anxiously waiting for new orders to come and to see what those recommendations and requirements are going to be, because that might allow us to finally be able to finalize some of our plans for seniors. We have been working with a group of seniors. They're called our Senior Advisory Council, just like we did last year. And we've met several times with them, and we've been talking to them about graduation, about our senior class trip, about homecoming, and about a potential prom. And we actually had another senior class advisory scheduled for today, which we had with seniors, and we have a senior class meeting scheduled for Thursday. So that was all perfectly planned out, anxiously waiting that Order 15 to be released from Dane County Public Health. And why that's so important to us is because previously the indoor capacity was 150 or 350, depending on whether there was food. And as Dean explained earlier, that hasn't changed. But what did change is the ability to have outdoor gatherings. And really that number isn't present. I mean, it's unlimited as long as we can ensure that 6 feet social distancing. So Epic continues to be our friends, and we have met with them several times this year, and we have been exploring Epic as a place to hold graduation, just like we have in the past. In fact, we just had a meeting with them before the week before break, and we have a meeting scheduled this week as well. In between there, with the release of Order number 15, the best option for graduation is clearly to have it outdoors, because then we can keep all of our seniors together and they can invite their family and their friends. Like we have in the past, we will still do live streaming. We'll still offer that to our families as well. So we're excited about that. We've had the graduation date on the books for a long time. It is Saturday, June the 12th, and it'll be right now, it'll be at the Verona Area High School, but outside. If there's a rain or inclement weather, we're going to schedule our rain date for the next day, for Sunday. So it's Saturday, June the 12th, with our rain date being the 13th at 1 o'clock on whichever day it's scheduled. So we're really excited about that. As of now, our students and staff will still be wearing their masks, and we'll be working out all the logistics of ensuring the 6 feet social distancing. So I hope our seniors who have had a really long year, it's been a rough year, I hope that the news, this information is well received and kind of fills their tank a bit. I just sent out today a letter that went out to seniors, and we sent it to you as well so you could receive a copy of it, because graduation, as I mentioned, is just one of those big events that are so important to seniors. So we have 3 other events, one of which is, I'll start with prom. So as I mentioned, we've been meeting with the senior class advisors and talking with them. They were interested in having a prom yet this year, even if it meant that they had to stay 6 feet apart and wear masks. So we are holding a senior prom, and it's for seniors only. Now we're going to survey our seniors and see how many plan to attend and pre-register, because if it's more than 350, we would need to have that outside. If it's less than 350, we could have it inside. So we know it'll be at our school, and it was always going to be at VAHS this year. That's not new. It's just whether it'll be inside or outside. So we're going to kind of pull together our regular prom activities and our post-prom and put it into one event. It is kind of hard, right, to dance 6 feet apart. You know, it's kind of weird. So
That's so old school, PK.
if you've been to a prom recently, they're in a very small area and they're very close together. So I don't know, but we're going to have a DJ and we're going to have fun things planned. And so some of the things that you would have seen at post-prom, like casino and other things, we're going to incorporate it so students can still have an opportunity to celebrate together and be together in their senior year. The other one is I'm going to have Rita talk, because Rita is actually the homecoming advisor. So before I do that, I wanted to mention we also surveyed our juniors, because typically at Verona, prom is more of a junior event. Anybody can attend, but it's really more of a junior event. So we did survey our juniors and asked them, did they want a prom this year? understanding that they would have to comply with the requirements, or would they prefer to wait till their senior year? And this year's juniors said they want to wait till next year. They'd rather dance closer and not wear masks. So we're going to have a senior-only prom this year, and we're going to have a senior-only prom next year for this year's juniors. So that's really good news. Graduation is on the horizon. We're going to be able to offer something in person. We're going to have a senior prom, and I'll have my friend Rita talk a little bit about homecoming.
Yeah, and a great big shout out to the seniors on the Student Council Executive Board. They typically help plan homecoming, and they gave a lot of great wisdom and advice on some activities they felt would be really exciting to do. I know we have to do things that like non-traditional this year, and kind of coming right off the heels of a prom, we kind of overwhelmingly felt that we didn't want 2 dances right in a row. And so we wanted to do some non-traditional things. And we also met with the Senior Advisory Council. So we had a lot of great senior input as well. And so they want to do some non-traditional things such as a movie night outside. So we've already secured the great big structure that is needed for a big movie outdoors. We're planning a scavenger hunt in our beautiful new school forest, and we're just going to have dress-up days and a lot of other fun things. We're kind of pursuing food carts outside during that week for in the evening. So we're logistically working out all the details now in light of the new order that came out Friday. We're hopeful we found out how many can seat inside the PAC, because we actually want to do like maybe seniors outside for the movie, but maybe freshmen indoors, because, you know, we can't probably have 1,200 or 1,600 outside watching a movie and logistically kind of handle everything. But we're super excited. And when we met with the seniors today, I think they're really, really starting to get excited now about all the activities. And all of these events come after the AP testing window. So they really felt they could really relax, have a lot of fun, and just really have a great time.
The last senior event that we wanted to talk about is the senior class trip. And Justin Scanlon is the senior class advisor that is in charge of the senior class trip, and he has been meeting as well with the senior class advisory group. And they really have it down to 2 options, and he's going to survey the senior class to see what their preference is. But we have the date. One would be like a local park versus having it on school grounds. Those are really the 2 choices, obviously outdoors for students, but an opportunity to eat together, sign yearbooks, play ultimate frisbee, some volleyball, try to figure out how to have a good time but stay 6 feet apart. So we've got all of the traditional senior events, the in-person graduation, the senior class trip, we're going to have the senior prom, and then a fun homecoming week. So we're feeling good about that. Some other things that we have planned for the seniors is we are also going to order the senior yard signs again this year. And we're also having masks made for our seniors, and that'll be a gift from the high school that says class of 21. Is there any questions we can answer?
Do you have any plus, senior plus options going on right now? So, you know, we have a lot, I see you have been working a lot with your seniors and what they want to do. I'm just wondering for seniors that are virtual only, if they had a plus opportunity they could attend to make them feel more connected.
We don't really, we just have all of our club sports and activities that all students can participate in, and that includes virtual only students can participate. The support that we have in place on Monday afternoons, that is specifically directed towards our virtual only students, but that is for more of the academic support on Monday afternoons.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
So with 3 parents that have seniors on the board, we really appreciate that you are doing all this work to make sure that there's something special for senior year to wrap up with. I would also just like to echo a plug for getting as many of the virtual seniors in if they can come in for 1 class. I know that's been important for, my son's been in person, but with the way the AP schedule, he only had a gym class, I think for 4th quarter. So he changed into an actual class because there is something about seeing everybody that you may not be best friends with, but you have been in school with since kindergarten in some cases, and just being able to say goodbye and have that experience. If there's any possible way to get any of the virtual, seniors in for 1 class, even just something so they can invest in the school. But I really appreciate all the work that you've put into to trying to bring some new fun ideas that I think will be just good opportunities to get together. And this has obviously taken a lot of work. So thank you both for everything
You're
on
welcome.
And I wanted to say thank you for including so many senior voices. I've heard from my daughter about the advisory council and student, voice in it. And I think that has been really positive. Whenever we can get our high school student voices in there, it makes them have more ownership. And I really appreciate that. So thank you so much. And we can't underestimate how much these events and these milestones matter. My daughter already has a dress that she's ordered and ready to go as soon as she knew there might be a prom. So you can see like the excitement that starts building for even a 6 foot apart
Great.
distance to prom. I mean, you still get a dress and you get some photos. So,
Sure.
there's something to be said for having these milestones for them. And I just thank you for that work that you're putting into that.
Well, you're welcome. And Pam, there's one other senior event we forgot to mention. The senior graduation photo.
Oh, yes. Would you like to talk about that?
We're going to take each individual senior picture individually, and we've already got some samples from other school districts, and they look beautiful. So the seniors were really excited about that because as you enter the main entrance at the high school, they have the senior classes predominantly on the wall. And one of the very first things the seniors asked at our senior advisory council was, how are we going to get on that wall?
We're going to work real hard to get that picture included in the yearbook. And I'm also thrilled to say that we're going to be able to get our yearbooks delivered to the high school and in the hands of our students, particularly our seniors before the end of the school year. And maybe as early
before the
as-
senior class trip.
Before this class trip. And that was a huge lift.
Yeah, huge.
For our yearbook class who did a fabulous job. Because, a big part of the senior class trip day is, to take your yearbooks and to sit around and have everybody sign them. So I know it's been a really rough year for students and for staff and for our families in general. I appreciate all your support, and I'm just really grateful that there was an adjustment to Dane County Public Health order so that we could do some of these things. I mean, I remember sitting with Rita going, okay, how are we going to do graduation at Epic with a 350 person limit when there's 400 seniors? I was contemplating 4 separate graduation ceremonies with 100 seniors apiece, and they could invite 2 people. It was, kind of mind boggling. And these are all the scenarios. And we, as every scenario, every change that's made, you have to play it out and see what you can make happen for our students. So this last amendment has been a great benefit to us. And I know there's 2 more expected before the end of the school year. So.
Right. And Pam, with regard to that too. So yes, there will be an order number 16 that will be issued likely the week before May 5th. So end of April, early May. At some point though, it becomes too late for any planning to take place for big events. So I don't know if an order that comes out in late May or early May or late April would be early enough to alter any graduation plans. And we can talk about that later, but so the indoor gathering piece, I think that's a reflection of the worry out there in terms of what's being seen in some states in terms of their number of cases going up, Minnesota and Michigan and so forth. So I think that influenced the number for indoor gatherings. So, but at some point, it's
these are large events to plan.
Yes.
They're large events to plan. And I keep reading, it's like, we only have 9 weeks left and, getting all this.
And just so you know too, I'm sorry to interrupt. I personally have reached out to the Director of Public Health to contemplate a case-by-case review of graduation because not everybody's situation is the same. Not everybody has a deep space Epic that has a capacity of 11,000 plus. And so would they consider looking at case-by-case analysis of graduation as it is the capstone event for our students? And the answer to that was no, we won't look at that. So the Dane County Superintendents have reached out to the Director of Public Health, Madison Dane County, to meet with us on Friday. We have our typical Friday meetings, the Dane County Superintendents. She will be in attendance at that. And that's one thing that we're going to be talking about is, can we review this? So, and I understand that there has to be guardrails. I get that. But I think the guardrails at some point have hurt more than they've helped. And I think they ignore local conditions, which are not the same. So we'll see. I'm not hopeful that that conversation will change anything in order number 15. But know that we're not just taking it passively. We have been pushing many things with public health for this entire year. And Lori Lubinsky, I know, can attest to that, as she sat through many of those contentious meetings.
Thank you, Dean.
A couple of us who are up for election had the opportunity to be part of a forum where some students asked us questions. And one of the questions they asked us was about student voice and how it works. So could you share a little about the makeup and diversity of the Senior Advisory Council and the Student Council?
For the Student Advisory Council, well, I wasn't expecting this question, so I'd have to go back and look at all the students that were invited. I believe, Rita, check me if I'm wrong, but we had a senior class meeting and we invited any student who was interested, if they wanted to participate in the senior advisory group, they were welcome to do so. So we really took anybody who was interested. All they had to do was fill out the Google Doc. We had about 24, I believe it was, 24 of our seniors chose to participate. So everybody was invited. Anybody who wanted to participate was welcome, and anybody who filled out the form and said they were interested had the opportunity to do so. So we didn't hand select anybody. And then some of our groups, some of our meetings, we talk like whole group, and sometimes we break out into small groups and then we come back. I think the Senior Advisory Council also did a great job of understanding that they're a small representation of the student body or of the senior class. So then we don't just make all the decisions there, then we'll turn around and survey. So for example, for the senior class trip, they've helped decide by providing feedback on what would be some ideal locations or things that they might be interested in. But then we don't just have those 24 students vote and decide, that'll go to a full vote of the senior class. Rita, did I miss anything?
No, that was right. We brought it up at we first brought it up at a senior class meeting, and then reminders were sent out, and then everybody who was interested was invited, and we encouraged them. Actually, you have Shannon actually email them a couple times and even call to remind them to be present and so forth. I feel like it's very, very diverse.
It is.
I think there's maybe not traditionally so much male perspective. I think it might be more female perspective, but I think it's a very diverse group and with a lot of wonderful ideas. And we always kind of mention, go back and talk to your friends, spread the word, because I do know they're giving up time on their Monday. Our meetings are 11:30 to 12:30 on Mondays. And some have other obligations that they've committed to already, but we always say, spread the word, get as much feedback as you can, and then come back with ideas.
Would it be possible to get a breakdown of like the demographics of the advisory committee compared to the rest of the senior class?
Sure, absolutely. That'd be really easy to provide.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Pam. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And Rita, always good to see you. Pam, thank you for coming while injured. And next, and I think last on this, is a bit of an update on athletics and activities. Joel, if you want to come on down, give us an update there. So we're very excited that we're hosting events and having events and practices, and it's just good to see people in the stands and kids on the field and on the competition court.
For sure. So let's see.
Let me get to that.
So we've talked about a lot of this. The first few points is just kind of what we've discussed. Everything indoors has stayed the same, so we don't really need to spend too much time on that. We've been talking about the set outdoor gathering limits. There is no limit that they provided. So essentially, what we've done is we pretty much have to go off the facility's mass capacity. That is the baseline of it, and we actually were able to. We're fortunate that everything we have is new facilities. So we still have a very good relationship with EUA, who helped us out. So we actually reached out to them because they designed, obviously, all of our facilities. And they've been dealing with this as well, too, with a couple other professional organizations and colleges as well that are trying to navigate this. So they kind of, they have their own equations that they use. Essentially, they kind of came up to a 25% capacity if you really want to consider 6 feet social distancing between those not from the same household. So they actually provided us with the numbers that they had for all of our outdoor facilities, and we'll be using that to pretty much dictate how many home and away fans we can have at certain events. All year it's been difficult, to say the least, in terms of trying to gather all the spectators that are coming into our facilities. Our coaches, it involves a lot of people, from those within the department to coaches to parents, having to communicate that to student athletes, having to communicate that as well too. So it's a lot of work to get that all right. So the numbers going up is good, but at the same time, it does add on more components when you start adding more people into those areas. But we've figured out a pretty good system from that. For football, for example, using those equations, it's likely going to be 5 home fans and 4 away fans, just given the size of the stands. And that's a pretty big increase from what it was before. We were doing 2 and 2 before. So that's helpful in terms of being able to get more bodies in there. But that's the biggest change, essentially, from where we stand in terms of everything, in terms of competitions and what they can do. Nothing there is necessarily changing. Same thing where student athletes are going to have to remain masked in most of our sports where they can't ensure 6 feet social distancing. Cross country, for example, they can pull their mask off if they're not near anyone while they're running, and it can be really difficult to run with the mask on anyway. So that's a good thing there, but it's really just full speed ahead for the rest of the year for us, the same way we've been doing, and so far as good as it can be. I don't want to say so far so good, because you always get bumps, but we've been able to navigate it all. So I don't know if you have any questions for me.
Thank you for everything you've done. It's been great to see the athletes out participating in the sports that they love, especially the seniors this is their last chance. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I would ditto that, and thank you for all the work. We actually hosted swim sectionals, which was amazing to see, and very well thought out. Plenty of distance between the different spectators. And I just think it was wonderful to see sectionals in our new aquatic facility. And I was remiss in saying, for state, we also have a diver going to state.
Yes,
and so I will call out our diver, because I didn't say that earlier. We have a wonderful diving well now, and we have a diver going to state, and that's great too. So I just want to commend all the staff that worked. I know a lot of aquatic center staff time went into that, and it was very, very well done.
Thank you.
And I want to thank everybody that was in the stands for our first home football game that contributed to singing of the national anthem.
That was wonderful. I'll say thank you as well, because you saved me there, so thank you.
There's an inside joke there.
Yeah, for sure.
If you were present, you understand.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Joel? All right, thanks, Joel, for all your hard work. I really appreciate that. We appreciate that. And just to finish up, and board members, we're on slide number 17 now. Just some logistics, transportation. Obviously, we've been keeping an eye on that all year. But Badger Bus is confident they're going to be able to transport all of our students starting next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow. They've been very great. They've been very helpful and just great to work with. We'll put a plug out there again. The challenge of hiring bus drivers and van drivers will persist well past the pandemic. So direct anybody that you know that has even the slightest bit of interest our way or to Badger Bus. And planning for summer school for transportation is underway. I give it a bit on buildings and grounds that Mark and his team are making sure that PPE inventory remains adequate. They're filling open custodial spots. They've been doing a lot of furniture moving and preparing for kids to return and the full opening of athletics. Child nutrition, the same sort of thing. Cinder and her team have been doing a great job throughout this entire thing. They're up to adequate staffing for more in-person students at one time. And they're going to be looking at the distribution sites for meals and kind of evaluating where that needs to be going forward for the rest of this year and likely through the summer too. And then staffing. So we've had some staff out with ADA and they're starting to return given their vaccination status and whether they're fully vaccinated. So, oh, and a little bit on summer school too. This is exactly what we had in the last presentation. So, and you can see what it is. We've got 3 sessions at K-8, two 2-week sessions and 1 4-week session, and secondary is a 4-week, a 1-week session for extended learning opportunities and 4 weeks for the credit courses. And then again, forecasting for next year to be fully in person, no hybrid, 5 days a week, normal schedule, including late start Mondays. So with that, that concludes the presentation. Are there any remaining questions from the board?
I have a question for you. So last, I think it was winter, somewhere in the December area, Public Health was going to convene a mental health assessment of our youth in Dane County. Has anything come from that? Have you had any meetings? Has anything?
Yes, and Emmett, I'm going to have you step up and talk a little bit about that. So yes, in answer to your question, that was actually in October that we had the press release. And at that time, it was contingent on additional dollars becoming available. And so then there was a hurry up and wait sort of approach until the American Recovery Package, I think that's what it's called, was passed shortly after the new administration took office. And so shortly thereafter, Dane County came out with a grant application that Emmett is working on, and I think maybe have already submitted, but I'm going to stop talking and let you take over because now I'm in dangerous territory.
Yeah, no, I think you're accurate, and it's due this Friday. So the county has $2 million that they're distributing to the districts in the county. The application it had a short window to complete that. It's due this Friday, so it's mostly ready to go. And what's interesting is there isn't a limit to what we can ask for. If more than $2 million is requested by the districts, then they'll prioritize based on those districts that have the highest free reduced lunch count, which we are in the top 4, so that will help us. So those dollars, there's a variety of things actually that we can ask for those dollars, and one of them actually relates to something that I'll be mentioning in a second regarding the Family Assistance Fund, so I'll hold that one back. But yeah, that one will be submitted this week. And is that what you're getting at with that question too?
Yeah, I was just hoping, unfortunately, that 6 months wouldn't pass before we could actually help a student. And I know funding is necessary to do all of these programs, but it's, Tom's mentioned before, frustration about having another committee, another bunch of people meeting and not getting help to the students as quickly as possible.
Sure. So this is like one method to help with that. What's nice with these funds, and again, this is just one pot of money, they'll be a pretty short turnaround. So once they're submitted this week, I think within a month or less, they'll get back to us, and then the money's available right away. And it was going to be available just through the summer and into the fall, and they've actually extended that. So if a larger sum is requested and delivered, we can use that right away. But also, if there are pieces of that will linger into next year, we can use that as well.
And do you have any ideas in mind for those funds? Can you
Yes.
just share anything that you're planning?
Sure, yeah, a couple of things I can highlight. One related to what I just mentioned about the family assistance funds, which I'll talk about in a second, but that's really about like basic needs. So rent assistance, utilities, that's where like if when they've tried everything they can to find funds for those sort of basic needs, they can't. Typically in the past, we haven't had a huge amount of money because we can't use district funds for those. We have to use like donation funds. That is something we can request with these funds from the county. So that will be available. And we've, again, I'm going to be talking about this in a second, but maybe I should jump ahead. But we've spent about $23,000 on those sort of out of donation funds since last spring, which is wonderful. And we really appreciate all those in the community that have contributed to that. We can add to that amount that we still have in that pot to help with those sort of things. We also will be requesting funds for additional counseling services during the summer, because typically summer being a non-school time other than summer school, we haven't provided a lot of counseling type or social work services during the summer. That will also be on that list, including not just staff that we have, but we have others that we've consulted with before or retired from the district that are more than willing to put some time in the summer. And that would be on that list as well to try and help bridge from especially during the summer where they don't have as many opportunities sometimes to connect on a daily basis with staff in the district, that we can help with that in the summer. And then also we have a number of things that are kind of, as I refer to, like shovel ready, curricular pieces, social emotional pieces around cell curriculum, social emotional learning curriculum that we want to make sure we have fully accessible in the fall for all of our teachers, where in the past we might have done that over a period of time. We can kind of fast track that. So those are 3 or 4 of the things that we have in that list.
Thank you.
Yep. Good question. Thanks. I would like to, I don't think you're getting at this, but I had mentioned about the Dane County Youth Assessment. So every 3 years there's an assessment too from the county about mental health. That is for our 7th graders to 12th graders. So that was conducted this year virtually. So those results aren't out yet from the county, but those will be reported to the board when they arrive sometime later in the spring, probably May. So.
Thank you, Emmett.
Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, superintendent's report.
Okay, well, I'm very excited to invite others to the podium this evening to give an update on where we're at with the African-American, the Black African-American staff, non-negotiables and needs. And Shayla Glass is here along with Walter Williams. And Shayla and Walter, is it just the 2 of you that'll be presenting tonight?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, and I know Miss Tamara is behind the screen here, so we may have to pull on her too. So, all right, Tamara, if you haven't sent that to the board, if you could just do that real quick. Otherwise, board members, I'm going to have you crank your neck around a little bit to.
You got it.
Should be. It should be.
Okay. Yep. Copy that. Okay, great. So, all right, I think I'm still controlling this. I am. All right. So Shayla or Walter, I'll let you take it from here and let me know when to click forward.
Sure. So good evening. Thank you for having us. This is really exciting. And I didn't realize just how short I was, that the mic was actually.
Feel free to adjust it.
No, I think it's fine. I think it's fine. I'm not even going to mess with it. So the last time that we, actually, let me just reintroduce myself if you weren't here the last time. So my name is Shayla Glass Thompson. I'm the Language and Literacy Equity Specialist at Badger Ridge Middle School, along with being an AVID co-coordinator.
Hey, everybody. I'm Walter Williams. I'm school counselor at Verona Area High School.
All right, so the last time we were here, it was September, one of the first board meetings after an intense summer of protesting and justice. And so we came to you all with these list of needs that we felt were pertinent to the district in moving us forward. And so I'm just gonna read them off quickly, and then we will give you updates on where we're at in the work. So first, they are divided in 4 sections. Black employee recruitment and retention. So need number one. Re-examine interview questions when hiring teachers/administration. Black colleagues, staff must be on hiring committees of teaching and administrative staff across the district. Black colleagues can be a part of these hiring committees on a rotating basis. 2, be intentional about who we hire with paying particular attention to cultural competence and having an evaluation system that measures this for teachers. And then the next, you want to take the next one, Walter? The
I
Black
honestly
families?
can't see that. So.
Okay, I got you. I got you. So Black family support. So need number 3, required monthly meeting regarding discipline data and keeping families in the loop with what types of discipline Black students are being referred for, considering that we have a discipline disparity in the district. Need number 9, this doesn't quite go in order. I think need number 9 is the only one that's not, since it aligns with the Black family support, but strengthening community outreach to Black families, the same way we do for Latinx families by creating an outreach team at the district level. And then we go up to Black staff and student support, hate speech policy. 5, establish a support group across the district for Black staff. 6, circles of support to be implemented district-wide at the elementary and middle school levels. And then last but not least, anti-racist and identity work or equity work. So justified anger or any other Black history course taught by a Black professor must be mandatory for all VASD employees and school board. This includes custodial staff, food service staff, and anyone else employed by or speaks on behalf of VASD. And then finally, monthly required equity identity work across sites. And this can be at staff meetings, late starts, sits, its, etc.
All right.
Yeah, next slide.
That's cute.
Thank you. So just some updates in regards to the needs. Need number 2 specifically. We've been in communication with Howard University, looking to set a partnership with them, essentially a pipeline or an addition of a Grow Your Own program. So we've been in discussion with the School of Education, higher ups there at Howard University to recruit potentially juniors and get them here to Verona, Wisconsin. We selected Howard because they're the #1 school of education for HBCUs. So if we want our students to be around the best, why not recruit from the best? And in our efforts to bring them here, we're looking to support these particular students with housing, get them connected with the Black community. And right now the contract is under review. We still shuffling through a few things. So myself and Corey and Lori has been doing some work with that. But it's been a great discussion. Howard University hasn't seen anything like it, so they're very excited. Essentially what we put in front of them, I think they'll be happy to take advantage of. But just happy that that's an opportunity that's been presented to them and to us as a district. Next slide, please. We also, every second Monday, every 2 Mondays at the month, we get together, the Black staff within the district, just to check in, see how folks are doing, check people's mental health, social health, emotional health. So it's a time for us to handle business, also kind of relieve some of the pressure that we may have experienced on the week. One of our efforts to continue to enhance our morale as Black staff, we held what I'll call a social hour. Up there you see a happy hour, but we just had an opportunity to bring up our Black staff together. We played some games virtually, connected, talked about things that was on our heart. And again, we found staff feeling very supportive and just having a space to be themselves. So that's one effort myself and Mr. Monroe, who's our school intermissions at the high school, started. We have plenty of events that we're looking to plan, but just with so many shuffling events, we've had to slow down a bit. So we got something in queue to bring our Black staff together again, especially now that the weather is getting better. Next slide, please.
Oh yeah, we touched on this a little bit. So just on a bi-weekly basis, our staff gets together Monday afternoons, just like Walter said, just to, check in and support one another in our roles in the district, whether that's at the highest level at central office or whether you are a classroom teacher. So I think just having that space, no matter what your role in the district, if you identify as Black or African American, that you do have that opportunity to engage in that space. So we have developed working mission statements, vision statements, strategic plan. You don't have to open that link, but it is there for you. It is a work in progress. It's a draft. It's not complete yet, but I think it's important to be transparent so that you can kind of see where we're at in the work. All right, circles of support. So currently, administrators across elementary sites are working to implement and establish circles of support for Black students. So in admin team meetings, and Nehemiah have partnered together to set goals around meeting this need at the elementary level. I am not sure where schools are at in this process, considering that I'm not at these administrative meetings, but this is an item that can be discussed with the District Equity Committee, which I'll be talking about in a second. Okay, justified anger course. So got a couple notes here. So Ms. Tamara Stanley shared an update about the justified anger course at March 1st board meeting. The district will complete the course on April 19th, and our facilitators, along with Ms. Stanley, are in communication with Nehemiah to discuss next steps tailored for our district. So a lot of feedback that we've been getting from teachers is like, what's next? What's next? Like, how are we going to move this forward? Like, what are we going to do now that it's over? And so Ms. Stanley will continue to be in conversations with representatives from Nehemiah to get more information about that, along with communicating with the facilitators to garner feedback. Also, a survey will be administered to the staff to get feedback about the course as well and get ideas of where to move next. Okay, so the District Equity Committee. So since September, the last time we met, since then, we have established a group of central office staff to develop a district-wide plan for systemic implementation of these needs. Okay, so we went over some specific, like need 2, need 5, some specific updates around that. But a lot of this work is beginning to live within this District Equity Committee. So a couple of things that we have accomplished in these meetings, and I will go over this if I could read my own handwriting. The first thing is establishing the why for this committee to be formed, right? So we are trying to focus on systemic implementation and leaning on the expertise that our central office staff have. And each member on our committee has made a commitment to a particular need based on their expertise so that they can lead and direct the work. The next thing that this group has done is assess what's already happening at sites as far as equity work and how we can leverage the good things that have already been done to inform new work and to assess gaps. So thinking about things that have already been done in the district and say, okay, what have we missed? And what new things can we fill in to do this work and move this work forward? Establishing metrics for success as well. So if we are going to implement these needs, we need to identify metrics of success, right? We need to know how we're successful. So a lot of these conversations about metrics have happened in these meetings as well. And then the next thing, setting preliminary goals for each need. So as each person on this committee, which are a few people in this room, have set preliminary goals around what each needs or how to implement each of the needs, right? So the list of needs is the what, and then the preliminary goals are the how. And with that, we're looking to establish equity committees at each site with staff members who will help us carry out the implementation across sites. So the equity committees at each site will be overseen by the District Equity Committee. That's what we're looking to establish right now. And that's kind of where we're at in the work. So did you have anything to add to that, Walter?
No, I think you hit it on the head. Yeah, good job. So next slide, please. So what the next steps are. So someone mentioned earlier, like now what, we know all this, right? We really want to continue to identify how the learning we're receiving in our Justified Anchor course on Monday mornings, how can we take that information and apply it to teachers' behavior, and how can it translate into the curriculum, right? Because that's where we hear a lot of students and staff, specifically our students, saying, hey, we want to learn more about our history and things like that, but how can we make it more tangible and practical? Because it is one thing to learn it, it's another thing to apply it. So now that we know this and have this great wealth of information, now what, right? So that's something we want to recommend, and ultimately looking to see how we can leverage the current timeline, or the current time, I should say, that's allocated on Mondays. Currently, and I saw that we're looking to go back to late start on Mondays next year, but how can we continue to emphasize the importance of this information and continue to connect the mind and the heart together as we lead with this work? Next slide, please. We also recommend that we continue to have dedicated Mondays to digest and unpack the information we learned from the Justified Anchor course. And we know that's only one platform that we learn so much information from, but there's so many others. We also want to recommend and consider maybe a consulting group or firm to continue to help lead this work. Though Shayla and I are at the front of it, as Black staff, it can become a burden to carry out this work, to lead it and to do it as we assist our colleagues. So it can become a bit heavy on us, because as this has been in addition to our contractual work that we do, 9 to 5. I mean, though we enjoy it, we love it, it can become a burden. So we're thinking that maybe it's also good to have someone from the outside come in to support this work so that we can sit amongst our peers and help get the things done that we foresee happen for our district. I do think we're in the right direction. If I was asked on a scale of 1 to 10, how would I rank the progress we've made? I would say we're probably at a 4, 10 being we there, 1 being we haven't done a doggone thing. So I would say about 4, because there's just been a lot of moving pieces. So as we continue to progress with this work, and if we think about these considerations and recommendations, I think we can be to a 10, maybe another couple of years, but I know we have to crawl before we walk.
Yep.
Any questions?
And one thing I would like to add as well to that, as far as the equity committees at each site, and just the level of excitement that a lot of staff have been having about like wanting to be involved in the work. The criteria for being like an equity committee member at a site hasn't quite been established, but that is an item on our agenda for the next district equity team meeting, so that we can kind of take a look at how do we get allies involved, yes, and how do we get buy-in, right? How do we move this forward, bringing bodies, bringing people to the table? And I think, but the thing is, the important part is that it has to start from the top so that it can be systemically implemented. Absolutely. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Good point.
Well, I really appreciate that comment, and I don't think I have a question, but want to reiterate just our thanks for the work that you are doing above and beyond to move this work forward, and it's been incredible in a tough year like we've had to see this progress. So thank you, and want to reiterate that the board unanimously supports this work, and I think when we talk about making sure that there is support at all levels of the district, and we're all doing that work as we move through this, our upcoming budget cycle, and we continue to look at policies. I just want to reaffirm and encourage you all to make sure when you have asks to make sure you return to us. I think we really want to look critically at our next budget about how to advance this work. So we want to be good partners, and that includes our policy work, our budget work, our communications. So please feel free to come back and ask us to continue to support this work. So thank you.
Sure. Duly noted. Thank you.
I'd just like to iterate some of what Noah just said. This is an extensive amount of work that you guys and time that you have put into this above and beyond what you do. I just can't even imagine. This is a lot of work. I guess my question for you is, what are your biggest frustrations in making progress? Like you had shared that we're at a 4, and how can we help make this move faster? There's pieces here that I would have thought we could have knocked off pretty easy, some hiring practice things. So I guess, how can we help? And what are your frustrations?
I think for me, and I kind of had to like look at the bigger picture, right? Like as we've learned through the Justified Anger course, and as Dean mentioned on several occasions, this is a 400-year issue. So like it's going to take time to unpack it for people to get the information, to unpack it, dismantle it, bring the right people to the table, and that takes a lot of time. So as much as we wish that we just want to get it done, and like the sense of urgency must be there, but we also have to remember, again, this is like since the country's inception issue, right? And it's going to take time. So I think the biggest frustration for me is like really wanting to get things done and get it done quickly, but also being realistic. When you want to change anything systemically, it's probably going to take 3 to 5 years. And so when it starts from the top, I think just the level of urgency has to be there, but it also has to be communicated effectively what our goals are to the next level. And that's what we're trying to do with the site committees.
Yeah, for me, that's a great question. Personally, I would say what frustrates me the most is the, when feedback and criticism is given, it's taken personally. And once it's taken personally, it calls us to become defensive. And then we don't make forward progression with whatever the matter is at the table. So I think if we can shift our focus from being so defensive, like, oh, this is not what we're about, to say, hey, we messed up, or we were grandfathered into something that was messed up. I didn't mess it up, but let's figure out how to move forward to make it happen. I think once we get into that mindset a bit more, I think that'll get us to where we need to be. Otherwise, I think issues keep coming up. We point fingers and say, hey, then we look at our equity framework. Things are in place that I think will guide us to the direction that we should be in. But I think the fact that we're defensive prevents that forward progression.
Yep, I think, definitely focusing on the wrong things, except the issue right in front of us. It's like, great point.
I have a couple comments. So about that defensiveness, we've been undertaking some professional development in my employer. And we talk a lot about, when my boss, I love my boss, she always says, when you have one finger pointing at somebody else, how many do you have it pointing at yourself? Mm-hmm. You have 3 more pointing back at you. And we try to approach everything with I can improve myself. I'm in control of myself. So whenever an issue comes up, we try to figure out, how could I do that better? Mm-hmm. And if you can get everybody at the table starting with, how can I do it better? Not looking out at you saying, I know how you could do better, and I know how you could do better. It's just really important work. And I'm really excited for you to get some more allies to the table. I'm glad you mentioned that. We also have at my employer 3, they're called business resource groups. It's a really unimpressive way to say we're supporting our employees, and everywhere they show up at the table. One is a women's group, one is a LGBTQ plus group, and the other one is for multicultural. We have a couple more in the works coming up next, and it's so powerful when we get people to the table who can help us, because this should not fall all on your shoulders. This is a community issue, and it's an issue that we need to wrestle with together. And it's a journey. It's not something you can handle in with one declaration. Okay, we're going to fix this. So I just encourage everybody to take the next step on their journey from wherever they are and just join us. Come down the path, learn what you can. Thanks for including the board in the required training. I think that's really important. Oftentimes, I think the board doesn't have enough formal training. And I think we have a lot of opportunities, don't get me wrong, but we also have a lot of board hours and a lot of other pulls on our time. But I think taking a step back to learn is important for us as well as for our staff, and so that we can continue to be better going forward.
Sure. Thank you.
So I was just going to mention, thank you, Walter and Shayla, and the rest of our staff that have done this work. I was able to read some of this stuff once I got on the board about some of the asks that you've had. And my comment is more directed to us as a board than to the 2 of you or the groups that you have that are doing this work. And as people of color, we are often put in position to do this work and feel responsible for doing this work, responsible for equity practices, responsible for, supporting students of color. It's just one of those is what it is situations. I've talked quite a bit this year, particularly about the importance of minimizing staff burnout as much as possible. And this type of work typically burns out our staff of color the fastest, right? And it's work that they do just because it's just who we are. We understand what the challenges have been in our communities. And so I am happy about the work that you've been able to do, but I do encourage us to seek external support in this work. They're doing this work on top of all of the other things that we have asked this year, in addition to it just being draining work. Also thinking about having these conversations with your colleagues is difficult, right? And we're almost creating and recreating the very issue that we're trying to get rid of. And so it's not fair for our staff to then tell their colleagues what they're doing wrong. Instead of, it just makes for a hostile work environment, especially with this kind of stuff, because it is very easy to be defensive. And that's on both ends. That's as communities of color, as well as the majority. So I really encourage us as we look at our budget we talk about equity work, we talk about its importance in everything that we do, but really putting our money where our mouth is. And I don't think that it's fair for our staff to take on the responsibility of doing all of this work. I think we really need to put some resources and some money behind supporting this stuff getting done, especially the structural pieces of it. I mean, I don't feel that it's their responsibility to write our policies. I think we need some support in that. And I appreciate you, but I think we need to, us as a board, we really just need to, put our priorities in order. And as I think about our staff doing this work, I don't feel that we have placed that as a priority. It's just another thing for them to do. So just my 2 cents on that piece. And then I had a question regarding metrics for the Justified Anger course. So I'm grateful that we're taking the course and that our staff have been able to take the course. Are there any metric goals for the end of the course? I think you said there's a survey coming out, Shayla.
Yes.
And then what is there a list of our hopes for what staff will do with this after, or is that also something that's in the works?
Yeah, so that will be a part of the survey, and Ms. Tamara Stanley will have more answers about that particular piece. But the intention of the survey is to get feedback from staff about what they feel like they need next, so that it can kind of inform our future professional development. Okay. So specifics, I don't know, but I think that is the intent of the survey, is just to kind of get voices so that we can kind of bring all of that data to the table so that we can make an informed decision of where to move next.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams and Ms. Glass Thompson, thank you so much for the work that you did. When you came to us last, September, when I met with you even last summer, this was all articulated and you had such a great framework for how you wanted to move forward. What I would echo what Yana said, though, putting it all on you to do is not, I think, a fair burden to be placing on our staff on top of everything that all of our staff have undergone this past year, and then to have this extra lift of the things that I think the district should be taking on to support our staff. So I really hope that we can find ways that we can support this. I think the needs for a consulting group are clear. I think that this is work that's hugely transformational. It's
Absolutely
needed. And again, asking you to give more and more there's only so much time in a day. And this is work that really is beneficial for everybody, but it's ultimately benefiting our students at the end of the day. And that's why we're all here. Thank you for the work that you've done this past year, though. I am kind of it's a lot. And it's a lot. So thank you very much. Getting the whole staff through the Justified Anger program is a huge accomplishment.
That's a win.
That's a
If that was the only thing that we did this year, that would have been a win. Especially in this environment with so many different changes and the reopening and but I do think that the unpacking it and applying it to teacher practice, discipline practice is so important. And I think that is going to take some time, especially since we're learning information that many of us have never learned before. And so what do we do with that information, right? And so it has to connect some point back to the schools in our interaction with students, not only in the classroom, but the hallways, recess, the bus, the lunch lines, and every facet of schooling. That learning needs to be applied. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I mean, again, it's been fantastic to get the update. It's been, I mean, amazing that you've had time to do all of this. And I do want to, echo what my fellow board members have said. We need to find ways to support you. So this is not the work that you are undertaking. It's the work that the district is undertaking because it matters as a holistic approach to our system. So thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I would just thank you as well. I just think this is very impressive what you've taken on and quite comprehensive. So I know, Walter, you said it was a 4, but with the amount that you have taken on, I do not know how there are enough hours of the day when we're going through a pandemic and you have your regular responsibilities as well. So this is very comprehensive. And as other board members have said, do not shy away from making your asks for what you need to move forward, in realization that there are a limited number of hours in the day, right? You can't do it all. I think the HBCU thing in and of itself, I was so impressed with that, thinking that piece plus justified anger, even if you took out everything else in this document, would be impressive to me. So thank you for taking on so much, but don't be afraid to ask for what you need.
Well, I think it's also on us then to recognize what you are asked for
Yes.
and fill those needs too, because they are, again, modest requests in light of the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would agree. This shouldn't have to be your job. And I would really encourage the administration to be coming forward. It's unfair to expect our staff to solve this problem on top of their jobs. And our administration needs to come forward with a plan. There's people who have full-time jobs and this is what they do. We have a role that's a director of equity. This should be part of their job. And some of the other roles that we have who are accountable for policymaking that comes to us as a board to review. This is not your problem to solve. And I feel like I'm worried that the way it's been approached so far is we've made it your problem to solve. And we need to find ways that it's the administration and the board working with everybody to solve this problem.
Yep. And that's our goal, right? That's why we developed these district at the top, the district equity committee, so that we can get our central office staff on the tables, on the books with their expertise and their job roles to really start crafting goals. And so that now that they have it, give it to now, let's make our way down and let's get other people on board and collaborate. I think that's the most important thing is the collaboration piece and clear communication both ways. From the site committees to the district equity committee to the site committee. It needs to be a collaborative effort so that everybody's on the same page.
Sure.
And just to put an exclamation point on, I think what we've all reiterated here, I mean, this work is embedded in our strategic plan. It is a part of our continuous improvement governance model. And the board has approved, these needs unanimously. And that means resourcing the work. So instead of encouraging administration to bring forward a plan, I think that there is a formal request that this be part of the budget process. And we see some tangible steps that the board and administration can take in terms of resourcing and supporting the work. So
that would be great.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Thank you both for coming out. It's nice
Absolutely.
to see people.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Really appreciate it. All right. I think up next we have the update on the use of the Wildcat Fund.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have anything left to say with that.
Yeah, maybe just one or two really quick things. So I just wanted to remind everyone that's listening that there are a lot of needs in the district on an individual basis for families, not just during COVID, right? At all times. And that can include things like school supplies, backpacks, occasional medication situation where insurance isn't covering it. Once in a while, utilities or rent assistance when every other means just isn't getting, those needs aren't met in other ways. And the list goes on. And I kind of shout out to the way schools work too, that, PTOs and parent organizations across the country and in this community often help out with those sort of things. We make connections to people in the community that can help with those resources, or they raise funds through donations and so forth. So I just want to kind of reiterate that that's out there. And also that there's an ongoing fund in the district prior to COVID, the Family Assistance Fund, that has a few $1,000s. I think right now it's about $8,000. And we use that for the same sort of thing. So when school level donated funds can't meet those needs, social workers or other student services staff make those requests formally to me, actually through Rochelle McCullough, my assistant. And we review those and make sure that we can do the best we can to match funds and resources with families. And that's an ongoing thing that started before my time. So I don't know how many years, Dean, that's been around, but that fund's been here for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And then last year, when COVID-19 started, an additional fund, so Wildcats COVID-19 Family Assistance Fund was created through Classmunity to raise additional funds, very similar to the other fund, but very specific to the needs that we knew were going to emerge during this time, which they have, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. And we brought in over $25,000 from community members who've donated those funds through Classmunity for those purposes. And our goal there, again, is to get those funds in where they need to be so that people's lives can be blessed through everybody's contributions and help maybe take the edge off of things just a little bit when people are really struggling. So I'm grateful for those donations, and maybe this is just a plug. There is still a campaign on Classmunity for the Wildcat Fund. And so if there are those that are listening that are interested in donating even $1 or $10 or $100 or whatever they can, those funds do go directly to needs that I've already mentioned. Once we get through this pandemic, those funds will roll into our regular family assistance fund that we manage. They have very similar types of purposes too, as I mentioned. So I just wanted to give kind of a broad picture about the different avenues for meeting those needs. And I'm grateful for everybody that's contributed so far. And we'd be happy to take any additional donations through Classmunity to help meet needs of families. And a big shout out also to our student services staff, pupil services staff, social workers particularly, who head that up at each of our buildings or across our buildings to identify needs and work with families. In no way are these funds enough to meet all the needs in our community. And so social workers here in the district work tirelessly with outside agencies, community organizations, and food pantries, the list goes on, to make sure that the best we can find resources for families that are struggling. And one reason I work in public schools is I feel like it is a place where families can go when they just don't know where else to go. And I'm grateful for the community and kind of stepping up on an ongoing basis, and especially during this time. Any questions for me?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is probably a question for Lori Lubinsky. Legally, what role does the board have in overseeing like how donations to a school are handled, particularly when we're talking about $30,000 maybe in a school year, and oversight of how those funds are distributed?
Yeah, generally speaking, that's going to be an administrative decision. The implementation of money toward various aspects of what has been discussed. You could certainly, through the budgeting process, earmark certain dollars for certain things. But in terms of using kind of the funds from what Emmett has talked about toward the various aspects, that's going to be generally an administrative decision. You might have some creative mechanism to kind of earmark some dollars that I can talk to you about in more detail if the board desires to do that. Did that answer your question, Carolyn?
It did. I guess I wasn't worried so much about expenditures. I just meant from an oversight perspective of understand how many dollars are coming in and like the big buckets of what it's going for, like, or are we sitting on $40,000 that's accumulated over 15 years? I guess that's more my question versus saying this person gets this dollar. That's not my question. I get that we're not in position to understand that.
Yeah, so I mean, your role as a board, as compared to the administration, is to provide that oversight, to ask for that information that you may want, to get information presented to you on how these funds have been used, and to ask questions and seek clarification, just as any other matter that would come before you. I don't see that as any different.
Yeah, and not unlike all the other dollars that are spent, whether they're taxpayer or donated funds, like we know where every dollar went. So that is something the board oversees, right? So if at any point you wanted to see where every dollar, we wouldn't release confidential information about the actual individual that received XYZ sort of funds. But you could see when each request came in, what it went to, if it went to MG&E, or if it went to get groceries at the grocery store, or personal hygiene products. Those are all listed out in a spreadsheet.
I guess I'd be curious to get an actual like financial report of over the last 5 years, broken down by year, what we've brought in, buckets that it's gone to. And then I guess also understanding the process of how it's distributed. Is it an individual social worker gets to make a decision, or is there a committee who makes those decisions? Like, how is the decision made? Or is there a threshold, like under 250, it's no big deal, but if it's over that, it's, it gets, I just like to understand the process.
Yeah, I could give you more information on that. And yes, what you're saying is the process, right? So it goes from one step to the next, and then the threshold is actually 250, right? And so we're actually, very seldom do we have over 250. Those need extra permission, right? But every dollar that comes through that gets the final say right now is set up where I'm the administrator that oversees those two funds. So yeah, but I'm happy to give you more of a spreadsheet, or definitely like I'm sure we could get it all the way back, right? I don't know how far back those records go, but yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dean, anything else under superintendent's report?
That's all.
Okay. Thank you very much. With that, we're on future agenda items and meeting dates. Any comments or questions from the board here? All right, next meeting, April 19th at 6 p.m. We can move on to committee reports. CIA.
Has not met.
Finance, BG&T.
Finance met earlier this evening, just before this meeting. We paid the bills, which you've already seen already. We also just talked about our heating operations. We have a contract for fuel costs, and those natural gas charges have gone up this year with the recirculating of the air at 6 exchanges per hour instead of 3. In addition to having fewer bodies in the classrooms, because those actually generate a little bit of heat too themselves. So we're reviewing that contract for future. We're in the first year of a 2-year contract. We're watching and monitoring our gas usage with the additional sorry, I've lost my words.
The air turnover and the increase in HVAC.
Exactly. So, and then with the new high school too, we didn't know exactly how that would pan out. And of course, this has not been a good year to use as a comparison for next year because we don't have most of the students in the classrooms. So we'll keep monitoring that. We're also going to do some comparison with MG&E rates as opposed to the vendor that we're currently using, just to ensure that we're getting the best rate possible. There was an overage in February, President's Day weekend. There was a perfect storm of cold weather and market demand, and we went above what we usually use for our contract. So we're going to discussing that with a vendor, and we'll see what happens from that. And then also we talked about, we've got an auditing accountant helping us. As a district, we don't have enough employees to separate the duties of the incoming and outgoing funds. So we have an accountant who's helping us right now until we hire the next director of business services. So once that position is filled, we won't need the additional accounting support, but right now we do. So that's just an extra expense for right now. Tom, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Sounds fine to me.
All right, so that's my report for tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Personnel and policy?
We haven't met.
Okay. With that, I will accept a motion to adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent E, to deliberate or negotiate the purchase of public property, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business wherever bargaining reasons require closed session regarding PSLO contract negotiations, and under Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent G, to confer with legal counsel for the governing body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved regarding vaping litigation.
So moved.
Second.
There was a motion by Meredith and a second by Yana. Any last questions or comments before we start the roll call vote? Hearing none, we'll start with you, Amy.
Aye.
Carolyn?
Aye.
Christina?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well. Yana?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And we are adjourned to closed session.